Your Excellency, thank you for accepting our invitation for today. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. I'm glad to talk to you.
Your Excellency, today you met with students from the Faculty of Political Science here at Moldova State University. You discussed about elections.
Yes.
In discussion, you also mentioned Georgia, that they were an EU candidate country that recently chose a pro-Russian government. Many say Moldova are in the same crossroad, I guess. Do you agree that these elections are crucial for Moldova's European future?
Well, these are very important elections. Right now you have a government that is interested in reform, that wants to join the EU, that understands that Moldova will be a free country, a democratic country, and a prosperous country if they manage to join the EU. You have opposition parties that in many cases, maybe not all, but many are funded by the Russians, that are not interested in Moldova in the EU. But some of them understand that this is a popular issue in Moldova, so they speak as if they are in favor, but they have no intention of pursuing policies that will get Moldova into the EU. So if such parties win the parliamentary elections, which is possible, but by no means, well, it's not only is it not certain, I don't even think it's going to happen. They might, but I don't think it's better than 50% chance that it happens. They will block progress towards EU, block progress towards reform. And then it will be the, you might say, the job of President Sandu and her party to point out to the people of Moldova that these parties are not being honest when they say they are for entry into EU. And that might lead to better results in future elections.
Your Excellency, based on your experience as a U.S. ambassador to Ukraine during the Orange Revolution in 2004, when Russia interfered to keep the influence, how serious do you think is the risk for Moldova today?
Well, the risk is very serious. Moldova is a small country, and Russia is sending massive amounts of money, given the size of Moldova, to bolster the chances of the parties that it wants to see win. And they bolster that way. First of all, they provide lots of money for campaign events, for propaganda, and also to bribe people, to encourage certain voters to vote the way they want. So these efforts are real and they have an impact. The question is, will these methods be decisive? They were not decisive in your presidential elections last year. They will be impactful, but decisive, that's a question for us to see. But I suspect the results will wind up being good for this election. That's not certain, but I think the chances are better than 50%.
Some experts say these elections are the next battleground for Moscow to keep its influence in Moldova. What kind of interference or pressure should we expect, and how ready Moldova is to face them? Well,
we've seen it again right now as they finance these parties. They have a very comprehensive propaganda apparatus in terms of their television. We all know about RT, right? And of that's also true in the written media and in social media. So they're pushing lies designed to undermine the Sandu government and PAS in the elections. And again, they are funding the opposition parties. So these are all very energetic means to achieve the outcome they want. But as best I can tell, we don't see Moscow being able to help count the votes, to manipulate the actual votes. And so that means I think their chances of success, while real, are not overwhelming.
Your Excellency, many experts have said that if Russia wins in Ukraine, the military threat to Moldova will become real. At the same time, we see Russian drones crossing NATO airspace, like for example in Poland, in Romania, and the EU responses are mostly verbal condemnation and sanctions. What should we expect, the same reaction in future?
Well, it's true that NATO countries, including the United States, have been weak since the big invasion, which is now 3.5 years old, responding to multiple Kremlin provocations in their airspace, in their sea lanes, and on their territory. Russian ships or ships working on Russia's behalf have cut cables across under the Baltic Sea. We've seen explosions at Rheinmetall, a German arms manufacturer, and there's been no real reaction. We've seen cyber operations. The Biden administration didn't respond when there were major Russian cyber attacks in the spring of 2021. And we've seen multiple violations of NATO airspace since the big invasion began. The first one was just a month after the big invasion when a drone landed in Croatia, and NATO, out of cowardice, said nothing. So Moscow continues provocations, and the provocations become greater. I don't think that the administration in Washington distinguished itself for strength when they denied that Moscow intentionally sent those 50 drones into Poland. So that's the bad news. There is at least some good news. First of all, with only limited success, Poland and other NATO countries shot down 9 of the 50 drones. Now that's, as we say in American English, not a very good batting average. 180%, 0.18%, right? Less than 20%. But still, it's something. And more importantly, Poland understood that the country with the best experience and the most knowledge about dealing with Russian air attacks is Ukraine. And they said, we need help from Ukraine. So now we're seeing Ukraine help NATO, not just NATO help Ukraine. And we've seen some efforts in NATO to take a look at this problem after the intrusion into Polish airspace. And NATO will probably begin to look at measures that will make such things more painful for Russia. But the weakness here is still no decisions to make it painful for Russia. Now, a very smart idea comes from a colleague, Kurt Volker, who used to be U.S. ambassador in NATO, who said that NATO should begin to work with Ukraine, developing an integrated air defense system and establish as a doctrine any Russian aircraft approaching NATO borders, even from 150 kilometers away, is subject to NATO air defenses, which means we'd be shooting down Russian missiles and drones over Western Ukraine. That would be painful for Putin, and that might tell him to stop the provocations. But sadly, Putin has counted as he began his policy of revisionism, which really started with their cyber attack on Estonia in the summer of 2007, and then in a kinetic sense in his invasion of Georgia in 2008, they've counted on weak Western leadership, and that has been a pretty good bet. Western leadership has gotten stronger, but Western leadership is still not strong dealing with the Russian danger. If you had an American president of the caliber of Ronald Reagan or Bush the elder, it would be very easy to deal with Russian revisionism because we are so much stronger than Russia. Without losing one American life, we can make it extremely painful for Putin to continue his war. But we have not had that caliber of leadership since 1993.
Your Excellency, we unfortunately don't have enough time. For the end, please, could you address a message for Moldovans before the elections?
Look, Moldova is a country moving clearly, but not without some impediments, in the right direction. You've elected a president who understands that Moldova's future should be with the democratic world, which is not just good so you can be free, but because the democratic world is the most prosperous world. Because only a society that enables its citizens to profit from their own ingenuity, their own labor, will succeed, right? Why is Russia, which has more minerals and natural resources than anyone, have such a low GNP or per capita income? Because they have a corrupt state. And they don't allow people to prosper as a result of their talent. People prosper in Russia by being able to join the government and use coercion to steal resources from the entrepreneurial sector. You don't want that future. You've had that in the last 30 years of independence. You want to progress the way Poland's progressed, the way Romania's progressed, the Czech Republic, since they joined NATO and the EU. That's what you want, because you're not stupid.
Definitely.
Right. So this is my message to the people of Moldova. Continue along the course you are heading. Understand the game being played by a country which wants to pull you back under its primitive system, a system which does not allow your people to thrive.
Could Moldova be a part of the European Union by 2030?
Inshallah. Even 2033 would not be a bad thing. But hopefully 2030.
Thank you so much
Okay, thank you
for your time.
My pleasure.